Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ellen. So if you're stumped on what to put into a sketchbook, you got a new color, like I have a new color here from Daniel Smith. This is an organic vermilion color. Boop. And I wanted to play with it. So I figured I'd do a tutorial by playing with the color and showing you ways to play with your sketchbook too, and ideas. So it's a poppy kind of drawing and tutorial, as well as a little mini landscape with the idea of putting the color in there as a landscape as well. Little techniques that people play with for learning how to play with watercolor, what to do with watercolor, if you have a new sketchbook, if you have a new color, and you're like, what do you do with it? Well, this is one idea. If you have any questions, leave in the comment section. Patreon members get the additional tutorial that's added on from this. So if you want to be a Patreon member, click the link in the description box below. But without further ado, let's get started. All right, so for this particular exercise, I'm using my sketchbook I have here. This is Etcher's sketchbook. It's like I think they call it the perfect sketchbook. I don't know. I don't like the size, but I like to play with it, and I like the paper in it. I have a tutorial of this Japanese garden on YouTube, and this one too. And this one's for Patreon. This is a place in Booth Bay Harbor, and then this is part of a class in workshop in Charleston. The paper is really good. It's nice and thick. Has a good tooth to it. Holds a lot of water, which I like. Like I said, the size, I just more like a square size, is preference for me. But I thought it'd be kind of fun to play with this sketchbook today for a tutorial, talking about using a new color and just ways to play with. If you're just starting out painting, period, it's always good just to play with color, play with studies. And if you have a sketchbook and you don't know what to paint in it, this is an example of this. I got this color from Daniel Smith. It's called Organic Vermillion. And I think the perfect color, I like to just put it on my other palette. It's like that bright orange. It's a perfect thing to play with, maybe painting some poppies or a little poppy field or whatever. But yeah, if you're just new to any kind of painting, you don't necessarily have to buy this. This is an expensive sketchbook. It was gifted to me, so I wouldn't, say that you have to have this sketchbook. I'm just telling you what I use. Just use whatever sketchbook you have. And I'll teach you how to draw a simple little poppy. It's pretty simple. What I thought would be kind of cute is we can do some like little vignettes here, right? So the poppy, you start off with the little circle here. That's the center. You can see that little pencil. I'm using a mechanical pencil, right? Just picture the circle getting a little bit bigger. That's the outside of the inside of the petal. And you're going to take your pencil and going to kind of go up and kind of wiggle and then kind of come in from that center. Again, wiggle. Right? Maybe a little shorter over here, kind of wiggle in here, and then put another one here. That's like a kind of face forward kind of poppy. A side one would be where it's just kind of going out like this and wiggling, kind of pulling it in, and then kind of wiggling and you're pulling it in. And then here's the stem part that kind of connects. And you can put the stem kind of bending here. And then we have one that's like not opened at all, that's slightly open. So like a little cap like this, and a little round, and then bend it. Now the poppies all have like little lines. We can paint those. And the leaves, I don't really have that much with me what they look like, but they're kind of just simple little wiggly kind of leaves like this, jiggy-jaggedy. Kind of bend it down. So that's what we'll do. We'll concentrate on the poppy here. We could do like a little teeny, I can say a simple little landscape here. And it's always good to kind of swatch your paint always on whatever paper you're using. It's always going to react differently to whatever paper you have. Here's a little swatch. Here's a little goop of my Daniel Smith. And I'll pick a simple brush. I'm going to grab, it's a fairly new brush. This is a 10 long round from Princeton, Velvet Touch series. So the center of this, why I did a center circle and then another circle, because the outside of this would have these little stamens that kind of come out, and you kind of have them kind of around the circle. So they come out like this. I'm going to erase my little circle mark, but you want to just use that as a guide. Do it really lightly. And these little stamens come out here. You can draw them in and whatnot. Grabbing a paper towel. I got paint on my fingers. So the center, super fun. This is a simple way to make a nice, almost realistic looking flower. I'm going to grab some cadmium yellow deep here, right? And I'll mix a teeny bit, just on the tip of my brush. This is Prussian blue, it could be peacock blue. So get a light green here. And I'll clean off my brush. So the center of this little guy would be yellow. And you could fill that in. It could be bright, right? And just leave it like that. Call it a day. You don't have to go any more than that. While that's drying, I'm going to grab that vermilion color just in the tip of my brush. I'm just watering it down. Look at that bright, beautiful, orangey, poppy kind of color. It's like a coral orange. So this is a fun little color I wanted to play with, and I figured what's the best way to play with the color? You could do all kinds of stuff with it, or just go on your sketchbook. And I'm just going to take the, see, we just drew this little poppy kind of petal in. I'm going to fill it in. Now, that's pretty saturated. If I add more water to this, just like with anything, with watercolor, and I tap it on my paper towel because I don't want all that paint. It's going to get lighter. Really kind of beautiful blush tone. So you got to play with the paint on the paper you're using. It's not always the same, right? And here I go here. It's going to be over here, the little bud. Just fill that in. You just can take the value of a paint color by swatching it. So here's the butter consistency. We add water, we get cream. We add more water, we get milk. We add more water, we get coffee, and add way more water, we get tea. See, the value gets lighter and lighter as you add the water. You want to play with that. And do all this on a sketchbook. You can just have a series of cute little designs in your sketchbook. It's just a fun way, and also a very educational way for yourself to figure out, okay, this is the vermilion that I bought. You write this down, and this is what happens when I add water to it, how the color looks on this particular paper. Try, because each paper is going to look different. It will. So I'm still waiting for that yellow to dry. I'm going to use this lovely vermilion, and I'm going to fill this petal in. I'm going to leave this free. I'm not going to go in that second little circle, just on the outer edge, like you see me doing here, and filling this in. Da, 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 da. See, filling this all in with this one wash of color. Simple. You're not going crazy, you're just filling it all in. Simple wash of color. When that dries, we're going to go back over with the same paint, just a different consistency like you see here, and it will add more depth to the actual flower. I hope this is making sense to you if you're new to painting watercolor. So I'm waiting for this to dry before I add some yellows in here. Meanwhile, back at the farm, we can make some greens again with the yellow, cadmium yellow deep, and Prussian blue. Or you could use whatever kind of blue you have, except don't use a cobalt or ultramarine blue. Those two blues will make a very kind of mossy, olivey kind of green. Or just grab a green that you have in a tube. I'm just going to put this down here for the stem. This is a great brush. This is a new brush also. I got a 10 long round. Usually I use an 8. The 10 was kind of, I wanted to try a little bit bigger brush. I love the point on it for many reasons. So you can just kind of pull out on the side while it's even damp. Just these little lines that going out. Don't have to be straight completely, kind of wiggle waggle. And that's what the poppy stem looks like on both sides. It might be easy to just turn the paper, but you see what I'm doing here? Little fuzzies that come out of this stem. That's what a poppy stem is. So you can paint it or draw it. It's a little study. Now, of course, on this little doodad, I'm going to fill this in. You can make this a tad bit lighter. Go down and then just add the little fuzzies coming off a bit. It might be easier to go like this across the whole stem than to take each side. I've mixed some more yellow into my color that I had before. So it's a lighter green, a yellowish green. I want a little light color for my leaves. Just filling this in, wiggle, wiggle, and connect it, right? And we can add some value by adding in a deeper green while it's still damp, or you can wait. So take the same two colors or even add in a brown. We'll make that green even a little bit deeper, and you can kind of tap, see that? I just tapped it. I kind of tap it on the little edge parts. And then like there, while it's still damp. That's why this paper is very good for wet on wet. And now that this is dry, I'm gonna go back with my yellow color again. I'm gonna add a little bit of burnt umber to that yellow color. So I add a little bit of burnt umber and the yellow color gets a little bit darker. See, I'm adding it to the bottom side. I'm gonna take that same color and I'm gonna make those little lines that go out, those little stamens. See that? You get tippy tap at the end, just as little dots. Boom. Now we're going to take our lighter green. Going to play with adding the green color in here, up in here, and our darker green too. We can bleed that darker green just in the bottom. So it looks a little bit more realistic. Now remember we just did that light wash here. We're going to go back and grab that same paint. Even if you use the same consistency of that paint, it will add another layer of it. See? Now I'm just going to wiggle little lines with the tip of a brush. Back and forth, leaving some space. Don't do it everywhere. See the darker color? It gets a little more intense. You can push down a bigger swath instead of skinny lines and then go little skinny lines. And that's going to change that leaf. That petal. Petal leaf. And same thing with the one that's over here. I get a little bit darker still. The value has changed. And this you'll see it be more evident in the light pale one than it would be in the darker one. Same thing here. This one's a little bit different because it's closed, but you can still kind of make little lines like this. Now we can get a little bit more intense by adding a little bit thicker paint. Remember we talked about the consistency of the paint and going in between these little lines here. So I'm going to get a little bit darker on this one where it meets that edge of that petal. And now it starts to look a little bit more 3D. You have to take your time slowly building this all out. And people get frustrated when I do tutorials or others do tutorials. They expect that they're going to get this overnight. You can't. It takes time. And just to throw the towel away in one session, please don't do that. Practice. And for some people, because they're not grasping it in their brain why it's not working, it might take longer than others. You know, we're all in a different timeline here. See, I'm grabbing it and adding some color from the top going down. See that? Look at that. It looks almost 3D already. If you want it while it's dry, go in here in between these little lines. You can't do it and add a little pink if you want, but leave it like that, a little bit white happening through there. And look how pretty and super hyper realistic it looks. Now I'm going to get even darker just with the paint alone from the tube. See that? Boom. And even here. It's really intense color. It's very bright and vibrant. See? Just a couple little lines. And if I add a couple of lines here, it will change your flower to look much more realistic. Now, I'm going to go back again with the Prussian blue, a little bit of burnt umber, to get a deeper green. See, I'm mixing those up over here on the side. I'm going to put this on the bottom of this little circle. And look how it comes to life like a 3D little object. And you can add little deep dark greens on the little dots here on the side. And get a little technical. Maybe add like a yellowish brown or even like the green. Kind of put some little lines. I'm going to clean up my brush, excuse me. I'm going to grab some burnt umber. mixed with a little yellow, so it's a very brownish yellow. And you're just going to put it over here. Or you can just get some little brown too, just burnt umber itself. Kind of pull that out, see? So those little lines kind of pop a little bit. I'm going to play with a little bit of green here. Clean up my brush. You hear that cleaning? I'm grabbing a light green. So now it looks a little 3D. That's how you make it. You could even take yellow right out of the tube and pop, 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 pop. Little dots around the edge to brighten them up if you want to do that. And now we've got the green here. We can add a little depth with some darker green on this one. Some lines. You see how you add the depth to it? Voila! So that's a cute poppy. Now let's play with doing a little cute little, landscape. I'm like having brain cramp. Now I'm going to just, for the heck of it, go real quick and add like a little wiggle leaf here. Again, it's just wiggling my brush, going back and forth, and I made that little poppy leaf kind of bending. You know, you can do whatever you want. So let's play with a little field here. So I just drew a little square, almost square rock, and you can just kind of just kind of map out where you want to put the land. So just here, simple, and then we'll do a sky and the land and create something cute. Since this area is so tiny, you don't need much for a brush, but you know, I like to use big brushes sometimes. I can still use this brush. I could grab a bigger brush. I'm just going to play with like adding in, going to loosen up some ultramarine blue deep. That's going to be kind of my sky color. If you want to make cerulean blue, I'm going to grab some of that. If you want it brighter, oops, my blue was a little dirty. So I have to clean it up. Grab my blue. So cerulean's a little bit brighter. Maybe we'll do that one. So you could do wet on dry on this because it's such a small space. I'll just kind of fill it in with blue. See, just wipe like this. Add a little bit more. And I'll grab some clean water. I'll just kind of take the water underneath that and next to it. And we have cute little clouds almost. It's just a small little section for sky. You don't have to get real serious with this. And that's it. And I'll just grab a little water. The sky will always get lighter going towards the bottom for perspective and darker on top. See if I mix the two blues and add a little bit ultramarine blue deep. And you get a little deeper color. Here we go. Playing with that sky. So I'm just going to leave it like that. It's a study. It's nothing serious. Right? Now, we want to do like this poppy field here. While it's still damp, we can play with just bleeding in a little tree. You take yellow and the Prussian blue, maybe even a little bit deeper, and some burnt umber. And we'll get a little bit more water. So the consistency is kind of like cream, but now I've added some water, so it's turned into milk. And this is wet, so we can just tippy tap, and it will create little trees for you. Right, same thing down here. While it's still damp. If it's dried, you're gonna have to either put some water there or a little spray or spritz. And I'm just tapping it. So like fuzzy trees, you can make it a little bit darker by adding in some more blue and brown. See this side, it was not wet. I'll get a little bit darker here. Just a little bit of fuzzy trees kind of happening. Nothing special, and I'm just going to put a little line down here. And you can make them go up by just tapping up. See? Grab the dark color. You don't want it super wet because it will bleed very much way up here. There. Cute little trees hanging out there. So you want that to dry. We could start working on this area. So obviously it's not acrylic paint. It's not oil paint where you can't paint the color on top of the color, right? It's watercolor. You have to leave the spaces. So either you can play with having the green put in here and leave the spaces for the beautiful poppy color, or vice versa. So what do you think you'd like to do? I think I'm going to play with playing with the green and leaving the space for the poppies. Or better yet, if you've never tried, you should try masking fluid, right? I get this, you can have this in my Amazon shop. It's pretty cheap, inexpensive. You get this PBO masking fluid. You grab a kind of an old crappy brush, right? And you can just push down an old crappy brush where you think you want your poppies to go. And they would be bigger coming towards you, like a little push down, see that? And little teeny ones in the back. And then you can just put you can easily put the green paint over this, and you don't need to do it everywhere. But again, big kind of drops in the front and tinier ones in the back. Do little teeny dots. See the little teeny dots back here? You obviously have to wait for this completely dry before you paint. Again, big drops in the front. As I go towards the back, obviously in the distance, they're smaller. And you don't need to do a million of them, just a few. So, it's always fun to play with masking fluid. We put that down. We give it some time to dry, and we'll paint our green, and we'll lift up the masking fluid using this tool I love. It's called a rubber cement pickup. And then we'll just put the color in, and then we're done with the cute little landscape. So I've let that dry. Now I'm going to go back in. See that green I have with the trees? I'm just going to add some yellow to it. Like a nice light green. We're going to add some darker tones to it when it goes down. So we're going to put this light green in here. Kind of wiggle it. Again, super simple, easy landscape. When they're tiny, you can just study this. Start adding in some Prussian blue and some brown. It gets a little bit deeper, darker. Right? You can put the first wash in. Play with adding the darker colors. And it's going to get a little bit deeper, darker towards the front. Look at that. I'm going to add a little bit more brown in here. You can take the same darker color as it's seeping into the paper, right? And a little bit of line, a little thicker. Get a little bit more depth by just kind of throwing in a couple of dark lines up back here and here. Again, I'm going to get a little bit thicker with the paint, mixing those two colors. Ooh, yeah. You want to kind of like throw in some little grasses. This brush is great with the long round. It has a nice point to it. If it's a new brush, if it's an old brush, you might have to buy a new one. Or use a liner brush. That's a great brush to use. It's a long, skinny brush. Let me see if I have one here. It kind of looks like this. Very long, skinny. But this, look at that point. It's fantastic. And I've got some dry paint here. This area is kind of dry, and I'm putting in lovely little lines. This might be a little bit more advanced for somebody who's just starting out with watercolor, but have you ever tried using a credit card? An old credit card. I cut them up in little pieces and big pieces. While it's seeping into the paper, it can't be super shiny where you see a lot of water. It has to be somewhat shiny, not really. It's kind of seeped into the paper a little bit. And you take the tip of it or the corner of this, and you can kind of scrape it for some white going through if you wanted some nice little, grasses that were lighter. All right, so now we're going to let this dry, and we're going to remove our masking fluid to reveal our whites. Now, I had some areas that was still kind of white in here. I'm going to go back in, add some light green in here. Just want to fill the color in. So when we remove the masking fluid, it makes sense. All right. So it's dry. I'm taking my little tool here. Look how easily it picks it up. That's why I love this tool. It's the best. You could use tape or whatever with your fingers, but I don't want my fingers all over the paper getting the oil on it. And look at that. If you didn't want to paint the vermilion color, you still have cute little white, and you can add daisies. So now I'm going to water down this vermilion color again. It could be lighter, and then we can just go right in here and put in the color of the poppies. You see? And you can leave a little white circle if you want to add the center, the yellow, or even black, because little black poppy centers. But now it's much easier for you to paint the color of these, because if you know that red and green make brown because they're complementary colors, or maybe you don't know that, which is why you didn't want to paint them on top of each other and have the little white coming through. It's just so much easier. Tippy tap. I just find it better to do. You can either way, or you can leave space without having to do it. See, just kind of wiggling my brush. I could add the yellow seriousness of the poppy like we did here, or just add a little black dot to make it like a black center poppy. And you can take the thickness of the paint right out of the tube and do some little dots back here, way off in a distance. Little poppies. See, I'm just kind of filling this in. Voila, I'm leaving a little white center. We have our little poppy field. Now, like I said, black. You could use a black color like a Payne's gray or a lunar black if you wanted to put black in the poppy. See, just a little black dot. Goes a long way. With this vermilion color. Boop. That's it, just a little dot. And if you want to get even more tactical, you can add some more grasses when it's dry with some deeper color, greens or browns. Now that it's dry, you can kind of put those in. Kind of fun to have them peeking out too, off the paper, like out of the edges. But there you go. There's a way to play with the color, a subject matter. Many ways so you're testing out the color, the value of it. You're testing it out maybe as a floral, right? I might go back in again with this lovely little color here and add some more lines. And then you're kind of doing like a little vignette of a wonderful little landscape to see how it would look as a little cute little landscape. I hope this is informative. It's kind of ways to play with it. You know, I would write down Daniel Smith, vermilion. Well, actually it's called organic vermilion. It's not just vermilion, it's organic. So organic vermilion. I mostly use holbein paints, but sometimes I like to play with other colors, and so maybe I'll play with the holbein paint. And you can just do like a little study. So if you're stumped for what to do for a sketchbook, these are great ideas to play with. And even though we just did the color upon the color, you can add upon that. I might grab a little bit ultramarine blue deep. Because it's the opposite of an orange tone, which is this, if I add a little, just a watered down ultramarine blue deep, you're gonna see the shading better. See? Of the poppy here. Same thing here. Just a little bit of that tone. It's gonna make it have a much more deeper value shadow than just adding the darker orange. I mean, just vermilion out of the tube. These are ways you play with it because it's a complementary color. So I hope this is insightful for you. If you're just starting out and like stumped and how do I play with the color, number one. Number two, what do I do with it? And if I'm just learning about colors and values and all that good stuff. So I hope this was fun and informative. Hope you had a good time trying to play with this, play with the color, how to play with different things in your sketchbook. If you're a Patreon member, you get the little additional tutorial. It's just talking about different ways to draw and frame your kind of like design that you have in your sketchbook. And these are just ways to play with sketchbooks and color and paint and ideas and the value, and you see how the color looks on your paper. So I hope this was somewhat informative for you. If you like it, let me know. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. We have a lot of fun over here on my channel. And if you want to be a Patreon member, click the link in the description box below to get the extended video, and you get all these kind of great exclusive tutorials that are not on YouTube that are like an hour long that come with reference photos and traceables and all that good stuff, plus a Facebook group. You get first dibs on watercolor workshops and retreats, which is actually very, very good perk because they're actually selling out on Patreon and not selling to public. All right, thank you guys so much. Take care, and and the link is in the description box. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.